What's up, fellow coders? Welcome to another exciting adventure in Quick Tech Tutorials. We'll make it quick. Hey everybody, and welcome back to another tutorial from Quick Tech Tutorials. And today what I'm going to be going over is scroll views using Autolayout. So I'm here at my storyboard. I've just dragged a scroll view onto the main view controller. And the first thing I'm going to do with my scroll view is I'm going to go ahead and get this laid out where it's centered horizontally, centered vertically, and I will give it also equal widths and equal heights as the view controller's main view. So I'm just going to come down here, I'm going to click on the update frame, it's going to get to the appropriate size. The first thing I want to do with this scroll view is just change some colors up. It's not necessarily a color scheme that I'm going to advocate, it's simply that everyone can kind of see what's going on. One of the things I like to do with pretty much any of my views is resize them, and I'm going to make the height as opposed to equal. I'm going to make it about, let's go with 90%, and I'll also make the width about 90% of the view controller's main view. So I have my view controller. As you can see, I just dragged and dropped it on horizontal, vertical, center, equal width, equal height. What I want to do now is simply drop on a standard UI view. Now, in order for us to look at these layouts more cleanly when the storyboard starts to get a little bit more complex, I'm just going to rename it, or I'm going to relabel it. And I'm also, to make sure that we can see it later on, is change the color. Again, not advocating the color scheme. So I have a view inside of a scroll view, and I'm just going to use regular views simply because I don't want content height or anything else with text views or anything else to kind of get things fuzzy. So this way everything's very explicit. So the first thing I'm going to do with this view that I have inside my scroll view is I'm going to put in the top space constraint, and I'm going to center it, and I am going to do equal widths. Just go ahead and add those constraints, and I'll give it a height constraint, and I'll just let it be whatever it is that it's going to be. One thing for the width, since this is going to be equal to the scroll view, I'm going to once again just make it about, I don't know, let's make this one about 85%. So you can see I have these errors with ambiguity for the scroll view, height and width. And for here, the frame isn't the same size that the constraints say it should be. So I'm going to go ahead and just simply fix that. So now I have these two errors still remaining for scroll view content height and scroll view content width. Coming back over here, if I go and I run this now, I'm not going to get any scrolling, whether it's vertical or horizontal. So obviously what I need to do is get the entire height of all my constraints combined to equal whatever amount it is that I want to have this scroll. So let's go ahead and take a look and see what that means. So what we're looking at here is we have a value from the top of our scroll view to the top of our view, the view's height, the bottom of our view to the bottom of our scroll view. Now we have a total viewable area in this case of 400. We need to make sure that our constraints heights combined extend past that 400 so we can get our vertical scroll. So what we have so far is we have the top portion, the height, and we don't have this bottom portion yet. So again, when we look at the errors over here, we have a height issue, right? Ambiguity there, it's not defined. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to set that to the bottom. The height is eliminated, and we now have our width issue. However, this still is not going to scroll. So when I start up the emulator, so you can see here that I'm not scrolling in portrait. When I bring it over to landscape, I do get the scroll, but obviously we want it scrolling at any given point. You may want some bounce here, you may not. If you don't have to do anything else. But essentially what we need now is we have this portion from the bottom of our view to the bottom of our scroll view. And you can see that it's 438. So if I make that, and I'm just pulling a number out, let's make it 500. Now, when I go into my scroll view, So now that we've started it up again, now I'm getting the bounce, the vertical scrolling, both in portrait as well as landscape. And that's what we want. Now what tends to happen a lot of times with people that are just coming on board with auto layout is they'll have something like this laid out. What I'll have is I'll have a leading. I'll go ahead and do the vertical spacing. Let's go ahead and do equal widths, and I'll just give this one the height that it's whatever it accepts. Now I want to change a couple of things just fast with this view. Let's go ahead and make that view the width at 50%. We'll update that view here. Boom. So now once again I'm at ambiguity for width and ambiguity for height. Now a lot of people will start using this and think, or start using auto layout, and they'll think that they should automatically start scrolling when they flip into the landscape mode. So let me go ahead, I'm going to change this color really quick, and we'll go ahead and run the emulator. Okay, and as you can see, I'm not scrolling vertically, and I am not scrolling vertically in landscape in spite of the fact that my view is clearly outside the viewable area of the scroll view, which means my content offset should allow me to scroll as it did kind of back in the olden days. Now, if we come in to, actually, you know what, let me do one thing so we can see this a little bit cleaner. Let me make that view 2. This is label. So what we're looking at here, we still have the errors for height and width. Now, I'll get to width in just a moment, but let's go ahead and take a quick look to see what we need to do for the height. So a lot of times what will happen is the developer will put on a view, they will give it a height constraint, and then they will pin the constraints from the top vertically down. And they'll wonder why it's not scrolling. Well, there's an important offset constraint that we're still missing. So in spite of the fact that our constraints from the top down, including our height, actually do exceed the viewable area of the scroll view, what we don't know is how far from the bottom of the offset that bottom view is actually supposed to be. It could be 10 million or it could be negative 32. Once we tell it, in this case 16, we have our total height and we have our vertical scrolling. Okay, so once again we have the top portion, the height of our first view, the portion in between the two views, and then the height of our second view. So if we come in and we make the height of this view, let's say 450, where we've clearly extended beyond the viewable area of the view or the scroll view, we still are not going to be able to scroll. Now, the reason being is just like I was pointing out a moment ago on the slides, that we haven't bound to the bottom portion, so technically we have incomplete height for the scroll view to have any clue what it needs to do. So in order for us to get this to scroll vertically the way that we want, is we need to pin the bottom of that view to the bottom of the scroll view. Now you'll notice oftentimes storyboard will do this where it has the bottom and the view's bottom kind of backwards. I like my constraints to read as if I were going to actually say them. So you can just go to the reverse, and now it reads the view 2's bottom is equal to the super view's bottom, and it has 20 points. So since these two got reversed, we're going to reverse the sign, and I'm just going to go to negative 50 and go ahead and run that now. And now you can see that I am scrolling vertically in both landscape and portrait. When we come over to the errors, you can still see that I have this ambiguous width issue. Now, there's a couple things that we can do for this, and you want to make sure that you get rid of these errors in storyboard. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to choose a view. It doesn't matter which one it is, whatever your layout, it's going to be dependent on what your design is. I'm going to choose a view that is going to be my primary anchor point for my leading and my trailing edges. So just how I lined up the leading views from view 2 to view 1, I'm going to choose my view 1 in this case as kind of my anchor point. Everything will be based off the leading or trailing edge of this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give it a leading as well as a trailing constraint. You'll notice that my errors have now gone away. However, this can lead to issues. So let's go ahead and we'll run the emulator again. And you can see here that I'm getting this horizontal bounce going on, right? That's not at all what I want. And then when I bring it over to landscape, it's not centered. This is just not what I would expect at all. So again, I'm just going to reverse these because I like it to read just like I would say it. With this, we have the option to remove a build time, and I'm going to do that with both the trailing as well as the leading constraints that I just put in. I'm not going to change anything else. I'm just going to change those two concepts for remove a build time. I'll go ahead and run the emulator again. And now you can see that I'm only scrolling vertically, and it looks nice and centered the way that it initially was. Upside down again. Now there's one point here that I want to bring up. This will get a lot of beginners. So here I am, and we know that earlier we set our view 1, we set the width to 85% of the width of the containing scroll view. Let's say that we wanted to change that after we've put all these constraints on. So let's say we want to make it 90%. Well, all of a sudden, now I have this mess of conflicts here. It looks nasty. So you might think, hey, well, maybe I'll just go in, I'll delete the leading and I'll delete the trailing that I had initially, and I'll just redo those all over again. So right now we're kind of back to where we were. We have the ambiguity with width. So let's go ahead and we'll do the leading once again, just like we did before. And we'll do the trailing, just like we did once before. And we'll go in, we'll reverse it, we'll do exactly what we did the first time. We'll remove it at build time for the leading as well as the trailing. Let me find this, boom, there we go. And we still have the issues. Unlike before, where previously we put in those leading and trailing values and everything worked fine, we rearranged the size and now everything gets out of whack. Let's go ahead and see what the errors are. Well, once again, this isn't even an ambiguity. This is actual conflicts within our constraints, in spite of the fact that it's exactly what we did a moment ago and everything was happy. So let's go ahead and delete that leading and the trailing, and we'll back to the ambiguity of width. However, this time, if I just simply do a trailing, everything worked out fine. I'm going to remove it at build time. I'll reverse it just like I did previously. And there's no errors. And when I run, here again, we're only scrolling vertically, not horizontally. And everything lined up. So this is what we're looking at when we start talking about doing everything with auto layout. One of the primary things here is to notice I didn't use one large view like a lot of tutorials out there talk about doing. This is just the individual components directly onto the scroll view. I think it gives you a lot more power. Now for this exercise, for this tutorial, I have no code at all. It was done entirely in storyboard, strictly with auto layout. So anyways, I hope that helps somebody out there. I know that when I first started with auto layout, this was kind of a few tricks for me. So in the comments down below, guys, let me know what you think about it. Let me know what you'd like me to get out there for additional content. I appreciate you stopping by. And if you like the concept of 15-minute or less tutorial, please go ahead and subscribe, and that way you'll get the content as quickly as possible. Take care.